In this 5-step tutorial video, I'm going to show you how to turn this into this. There are certain things that just scream 80s and 90s, and one of those is a VHS tape cassette. And although not many people still watch them, although I do, it doesn't mean you can't still use them to create a quick and easy retro feel in your own home, using this 5-step tutorial on how to make a retro VHS tape cassette light. But firstly, let's have a look at what you'll need. 60 to 90 minutes depending on your expertise and level of finish. Scissors, tape, a glue stick, screwdriver, string lights, adhesive tape, glue dots or Velcro. A drill is optional. Coloured perspex or cellophane sheets, optional. A VHS tape. In this instance I've decided to do this one, which is Ninja in the Killing Fields. The reason I've chosen this one is twofold. First, it has a really interesting cover sleeve with this holographic finish in red and blue holograms, and secondly you can see that this one has suffered with cassette mould, and so it's an ideal candidate for reusing this one. Part 1. Disassemble the tape cassette. For those who aren't familiar with VHS tape cassettes, they're very simple in their construction. It's a solid plastic case which holds 2 reels with the tape bound around it. To see the tape you can actually depress this button on the side, open it up, and that would open when it's in the machine for the heads to read it. On the back you have usually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws, and this one here is when the reels get jammed you can depress this, which allows them to be moved. So all we're going to be doing initially is taking these off. Tape cassettes may vary, some of them have moulded plastic in parts, so just see which you have. Top tip: when disassembling, turn over and ensure that this side is face up, otherwise a lot of the moving parts will just fall out. So once that's done, depending on whether or not you have any stickers on the side which will need cutting, you'll be able to now lift the 2 parts away. Now in this one we don't have any stickers, and so we should just be able to gently move the top and reveal the inner workings of the VHS tape. So as I mentioned before, we have the reel here, the tape then running through this section across and then back down, and then when you depress this section in here you can see that this part pushes down on here and removes these from the teeth, and that's how that section works when it's all jammed up. We're not too concerned, and actually we're going to be getting rid of a lot of these moving parts because they'll no longer be required. Just lift the reels out. So I'll come back to the reason why there's an optional step, but I'm going to keep these bits in where you saw the tape was running across them. So over here, so that's disassembled, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this part here and these parts here. So the only bits we've got left are those. These are all attached, and also the reason we take it off this way is there's a spring just in there that kind of operates the flap. It's a little bit easier if you do this rather than having to put it back in place. Part 2. Removing tape from the reels. Although it doesn't look like it, there's an awful lot of tape on these reels. If you try and do it by hand you will be there forever. So I'm going to show you my top trick and way of doing this. So first of all, I'm actually going to just take a small amount of good tape. So we're going to unravel this bit here and snip this all the way down to the end. Another tip is you can go through these windows to get nice and close. So that's that removed. I'm also going to, as I mentioned, just retain a small amount, and that'll become clear in the optional step that will come after this. So now, my top tip for taking all of this off was the optional drill that you saw at the start. So having a drill on its fastest settings, and you just put in something like a pencil inside. Then you take some sellotape and attach the tape to the pencil. And now what you can do is just by gently holding with your fingers either side of the reel, we can use this to then help us unwind. And what you'll see is it'll all build up on here, but then it's very easy to kind of push off when you're done. So I'll start doing this now. And there we are, that's all the reel sorted. And then what I can do now is again just cut this part off, and this will then easily just kind of drop off. You can see it just all comes off there, and that can just go in the bin. Optional step. What I like to do is with that part that I've retained is actually reattach it in a way that when you open that flap you can still see the tape as if it was a tape cassette player. I just think it's a nice touch, and on top of that you still own a piece of the tape that it's all associated with. So the way in which I do that is trim this down, and again using some sellotape is put this inside this area here. And it's a little bit easier to do this now than it is at a later stage. And then this is where it would then go around here. It would then go between these. And then what I'm going to do is then reattach it again, just in this section, probably just on here. So now when you open the flap up, it will still look like there is a tape in there, but it's just an illusion. Step 3, installing the string lights. There are a number of different types of string lights you can get online. Some of them are coloured, so you can just put them straight in and they'll give a multicoloured effect. Others of them will have white lights, like these ones. Some will have this copper type wire, others will be clear. And there'll be smaller ones or ones with double A's. Now the reason I have chosen this one is because it takes 2 double A's and it lasts quite a long time. But the main reason is that this version has a timer. So rather than have on, off, this one has a timer, which means that you can turn it on and it stays on for 8 hours and then turns off for 16 hours. Now you're primarily going to be using this in a room for when it's dark, like in the evening or in a bedroom. So the beauty of that is you can turn this on in the evening and it will automatically come on every night for 8 hours, not only conserving the battery, but it removes that effort of having to go over and turn it on. So I think it's a really nice idea to use the double A's and for it to have a timer. So the first thing I need to do now is just untie this and unfurl the fairy lights. That's all unfurled now, and then I'm going to give you another top tip, which is at this point it's a good opportunity to find where the middle is. So what I'm going to do is take this end here and put it down with the power pack and roughly work out where the middle is. So the middle on this one is around here. So what I'm going to do at this point is just put this loop in here, and that will come in use because we're going to do half here and half there. Now the way I do the string lights is I like to reuse this hole here that's at the rear. That way it's all nice and neat. So thread through this part at the rear, and then what we're going to start doing is attaching it onto the reel. We'll do half and then we'll move it onto the other half. To do that, again, just another small amount of tape like so, just to help get things started. And remember, this side is going to be face up. If you've got any dirt, you can just take this opportunity to clean underneath as well. But despite there being mould in there, this is actually fine as it is. So we've got the sellotape here, like so, just attached on there. And then what we're going to start doing is wrapping this around the spindle. Now, what we're going to do is try and get it so that the light spread out evenly. But one thing to remember is when this is on, you're only going to see this portion. So you're not going to see any, although it will be illuminating, you're not going to actually see the lights that are here. So you want to at least make sure some of them are in this portion of the window. And so as you're wrapping around, you're just kind of looking at them. So if they're next to each other, the next time round, you just want to make sure maybe that there's one on the other side instead. Just feeding it through the back. Again, just trying to get them on different sides if I can. It won't always work. And you see there's how that reminder there, so it stopped us carrying on. So what I'm going to do now is just undo this. And so that one's complete. So we pop this down and then we start now on the other side. So this is now going to move over to here. We're going to continue on here. This is just going to sit underneath that hole there. There's actually a pin that's going to go into there and do exactly the same. Just a couple of tight ones to start. Once we approach the end, this part's now going to come through on this set of lights anyway. So what I'm going to do is, that's the routing done for both of them, I'm going to use these natural options here to wind this rear bit just in here, and that will just help us secure this in place. This brings us on to the next optional step, which is adding colour. As I mentioned at the beginning, I thought the case was quite nice with this holographic red and blue, and so that's a theme that I'm going to go on. So I'm going to go for a red on this side and a blue on this side, using some of these cellophane sheets. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach these onto here. Well, there's actually a few ways you can do it. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is get the colour on this side. Now, you could, in theory, just slide it behind here or attach it onto here. You could also just cut them out and lay them on top, because these things would hold them in place. You could use some sellotape. What I'm going to do is attach them onto here just with a small amount of glue, but the glue is going to kind of go here, here and here primarily, because they're the areas you don't see, and then I'm going to try and avoid putting glue on there. I've tried using sellotape as well in the past, and that works to a small extent, but I'm going to go with this option. What I'll also show you is, although the cellophane looks quite dark, when you put it on and shine through, they become a little washed out, and so I found with trial and error that you actually need to almost have 4 layers of cellophane to give it more of a dark colour, especially when the lights are on. And what that also does is, by having 4 layers, it disguises the lights a little bit behind as well. And you can experiment. So if I put on there, it doesn't look too bad, but if I have like 4 layers, you can get quite a nice rich colour. So I get the cellophane like this. I just put some glue down one side and down this side, and then where I think the middle's going to be, so roughly here, then fold over and then smooth down. So basically minimise as much of the creasing as you can. I'm going to fold it over again like this and leave this section without any glue, because I think we'll go like that. And then what I'm going to do is now attach this onto the reel. I'm just going to use a small amount of glue, again primarily around these sections here. And then once that's on, I'm just going to lift it out and trim the excess away. And exactly the same for the red one. So one thing I just realised is I wanted to do red on this side, didn't I? Because red was the more obvious colour. So you can just peel it off. So there we go, there's our 2 coloured bits, and as I mentioned, they'll be held down in place as well, and they'll look a little something like that, which we'll see in a moment. And that brings us on to step 4, which is reassembling the tape. To reassemble, we're just going to make sure this cable is still just seated in a good position, with the wire again sat in a suitable position where it's not going to get tangled up in anything. Pieces like this are just back inside, that this central area is clear, ready for that area down there. I'll turn this off for now and just slide this down onto the top. Over we go, and then it's just putting the 5 screws in that we took out right at the very beginning. Step 5, securing the battery pack, putting it in the case and doing some testing. So to secure the battery pack, because the way in which we've used the hole at the rear to do some effective cable management, we're now going to place this battery pack down here at the bottom section, just down here. Now the reason I put it down in this section is so that when you stand the tape up, it gives it a little bit of extra stability both this way and also when you stand it up that way. Now remember, by using the timer function, we're not going to have to constantly go to it either. To secure it down there, we're going to use some Velcro. You can also use some glue dots or something similar, but the reason I'm using Velcro is we're going to detach this to store it in its case, which you'll see in a minute. So trim that down ever so slightly. Doesn't matter too much which side you have on the tape. I generally go for the fluffier side rather than the hooks, because when it's in the case, it compresses a little bit better. So I'm going to have it like this. And then what you can do is you can either use this hole here, or you can use that hole at the top as well if you've got any extra. So it all keeps it nice and tidy out of the way. And so what you can see is it then just stands up. It would do anyway, but it saves it, you know, it stops it knocking over inadvertently, and you can also put it that way. And another good thing about using Velcro is what you can do is if you're giving this to someone as a present, you can also give them it in the tape cassette box. So you give them this and they think they're going to get the video, and then they open it up and you can actually have the light inside here. And the way that works is you've got to be careful, especially if you use strong Velcro, because sometimes it pulls off the back. But if you carefully, because this Velcro is really strong and it wants to pull the back off, what you can do is put this in the box with the spine over to this side here, and then with your cable you just run it into the gap there and close it up. And you can see what you can then do is attach this on the back, on the side, wherever you like. You can just put it somewhere, and so when they get it, they're actually getting the tape cassette like this. Then when they open it up, they can see that it's different, and you can put a little note in there. You can then take it out and, you know, secure this onto the back. So what I'll do now is I'll clear the decks, I'll put this kind of stood up so we can see it properly, and we'll go through a summary of the stages and wrap up the video. So here we are at the end of our 5-step tutorial on how to make a retro VHS tape light. At the very start I showed you the equipment that you would need, and that was everything from the videotape that you were going to use to sellotape, screwdrivers, glue stick, all those bits and bobs. Step 1 was then the disassembly of the tape cassette, and it was removing the 5 screws from the back. Sometimes this can be a flat head with an odd shape, but just basically taking it apart with my top tip to then have it this way up when you lifted it so that all the bits didn't fly everywhere. Step 2, that was removing the tape from the reels, and there's an awful lot of tape on these tape cassettes, and so my top tip was you take a drill, put something like a pencil in the end of it, attach the tape to it, and then unwind it that way, and you can just throw it straight into the bin. I then gave you an optional step, and that was to replace some of the tape into the tape cassette. So by holding this down now on this one, for example, we still have some of that tape there for that original feel, even though it's just an illusion, and you know, a lot of people aren't even going to know it's there, but it's just a nice optional step that you can do to retain a piece of the original tape. Step 3, that was then installing the string lights. So that was feeding them in through the back, and I gave you that tip about finding a halfway stage and putting a twist in it so that you don't wind too much and then there's more lights on one side than the other. We attached it inside onto the spindle with a bit of tape, wound all the way around, and then you're just going to readjust until you get a nice amount of lights on either side. When you get halfway, you just go from one side to the other, and yeah, that's basically it for installing the string lights. Following that, we then had another optional stage, and that was the ability to add colour. In this one, I've chosen to use a red and a blue. You'll get some slight crinkling in the film, but when it's sat on a shelf, you're not really going to notice. And the way I did that was with some cellophane. I've used 4 layers thick for this one to give this amount of colour, otherwise I find it's a little bit washed out, and it's also a bit more forgiving on hiding the wires behind there as well. So that brought us on to step number 4, which was reassembling the tape once that was done. So that was basically getting all the wires inside out of the way of where things like posts and pillars are going to sit, and reassembling it, putting it all back together and putting the screws back in. And that brought us on to step 6, which was then just attaching the power pack to the rear, using some Velcro to attach it in this instance. Putting it here allows you a bit of stability this way and also a little bit of stability this way, and you can put any excess cabling inside here. Now, so yeah, you can see it's all hidden away. Now, also the reason I do that was so that you could then open this up, put the case inside, and then route it in the crack, and it allows you to then provide someone this as a gift inside the video case. So they were the 5 steps with a couple of optional steps to get to our final product here. And I thought I'd also take this opportunity to show you another couple that I've done as other examples. So this is the first one here. I really liked this box, Strange Invaders. Looks like, well, it says it's a movie, but it kind of looked like one of those silly documentaries that you'd get. And again, this one had some tape mold. You can see here again we've got the power pack that's separate, and then when you open it up you've got the tape here. And what I thought was, with this being a Strange Invaders and an alien type one, I'd go for a green effect. And so that's the Strange Invaders. And then there's another one over here. So this one, Tales of Terror, exactly the same as the other two. So you can open the box, take out Tales of Terror. And with this one, if you didn't already see, I decided to go with red because it's horror, red, blood, that kind of thing. And you can see how that works really nicely with this case as well. So I'll just line those up for nicety. There we go. And what you can see in this image is how you can display them in lots of different ways. So by doing it in the way that I make it, supplying the video case as well, you could sit it on top of the case like this. So you've got the detail here. You could stand this open to give a bit more depth with this in front of it. Or equally, you could have it next to it like this in the vertical position. I hope that you've enjoyed the video, and I hope some of you use it and have an attempt yourself. And please let me know in the comments if you followed the tutorial and you've managed to make one. I'd love to hear if you were successful. If you're a little bit cautious or you're not sure about making one but you're interested, then please feel free to get in touch with me using the contact details at the end of the video. You can put in a request to me for any videos that you'd like, and I'll just source them and make them for you. Again, if you also like the video, stay tuned because YouTube's about to recommend you one of my other videos that I've already made, and it'll be appearing about now up here. Until the next one, all the best, take care, and see ya.